Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance is, or at least should be, known equally for its combat as its writing quality, where the player is incentivized to slice and dice their adversaries in as little tiny pieces as possible. Hey gamers, this is the second part to my 100 sub special, To Cut a Soul, a comprehensive review of Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance. In the first part, I covered the game's entire narrative, as well as some of the minor character relations. In this one, I'll be talking about the incredible gameplay given to us by one of my favorite dev studios, Platinum Games, developers of some of the greatest single-player action games I can name, like Nier Automata and Replicant, as well as, of course, the Bayonetta series. Beyond gameplay, I will also of course be giving my 3, maybe even 5, cents on this game's kick-ass soundtrack, and then after my personal gripes and critiques, with the conclusion just after that. This game's flawed for sure, but seriously, that is not even remotely a deal breaker. It's just a little misguided, which ultimately created a certain charm to it. The same kind that you would find in the best of the 6th generation series of consoles, like the legendary PlayStation 2 and original Xbox. As explained in Part 1, we play as Raiden, turned again to Jack the Ripper, and we're tasked with liberating hundreds of thousands of orphan brains from a Desperado LLC, whom of which was funded primarily by Mr. Senator Stephen Armstrong, the main antagonist of the game. But how are we going to do all this, you may ask? Well, by rending every foe in our path asunder with lightning-fast, cybernetically enhanced sword slashes, and a small but ultimately underwhelming set of secondary weapons, and also a completely unnecessary list of consumables like grenades and rocket launchers, and stealth mechanics? Whatever, yeah, we'll get to it. Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance's combat system feels distinctly platinum, with square and triangle being your light and heavy attacks. From there, you are given a considerable amount of combo strings to choose from, some of which can be seamlessly strung to one another. This game is no Bayonetta, but that doesn't mean it's not stupid fun to do even the most basic of combo strings. In addition to the semi-fluid combo system, you are also given access to multi-button press moves, the most notable of these being the X and square press, which sees Raiden slash while dodging to the side. This gives you iframes, and for a long time was the only way I knew how to negate damage. You can dodge essentially everything with this move, so don't be afraid to incorporate it in your repertoire. On the topic of damage negation, we need to of course converse about weapon parrying. This thing is going to feel really janky for a solid 2 or 3 hours of playtime in a game that takes you about 5 to complete on your first run. If you don't know how to do it prior, that is. It's a good thing I'm here, so listen up. Boris, Raiden's team leader, tells him that all you have to do is throw out your own stream of light attacks to parry whomever is attacking you. This is wrong, and will get you killed every time. Do not listen to Boris. Boris is wrong. You have to point your left stick in the direction of the enemy that is about to attack you, and then press light attack. The funny part is, being that once you know this, Raiden will bring up his guard for a considerably long time to guard the attack. Every time. And you don't have to worry about other adversaries interrupting your block intended for someone else. This combat system is tuned to where hardly ever, and I mean it, everyone you fight will wait their turn, especially if the player is blocking someone. This system is good, but only after you finally get a feel for it, which I can respect. Even though Platinum traded the reliability of a dedicated block button, I think this is a good alternative because, as I said earlier, this also works as a parry mechanic too. Tied to the exact same command as block, to parry one just needs to intercept an attack pretty much as it is about to connect with Raiden. This is not the easiest thing to do in the game and will have you calling it janky, because I did. But hey, if you do manage to land a proper parry, Raiden will deflect and dish out his own pain sandwich to the sucker in question. From there, you will be prompted to enter blade mode and perform a sandatsu on virtually everyone within a sizable health bar. This game's big selling point was that the player could chop, slice, dice, scatter, smother, and even cover their foes with a flurry of sword attacks. Blade mode is seriously awesome. With a hold of the left trigger, Raiden readies himself and can slice either horizontally or vertically, with the respective press of light and heavy attacks. But it is important to note that they have the same damage model, it's only directional. If sideways and up and down aren't your shtick, then direct thine attention to the ability to place your cutting direction in a custom spot with the use of a right stick. You can activate blade mode virtually anywhere, standing, jumping, even sliding. Your whole world perception slows down for as long as your focus bar allows, and the game hands you full creative freedom to commit some heinous murder. Blade mode is balanced by the game only allowing you to dismember limbs if your focus meter is at max, and it's being performed on grunt enemies, or if the big fellas are in your face, they have to be weakened pretty significantly. But of course, onto the actual intention of blade mode, to take the electrolytes stored within the cybernetic guts of those who oppose you. As explained in part 1, Raiden is outfitted with a new body that is of the cool as hell variety. This new digs allows him to slow down his perception of time and all of that jazz, achieved with the consumed electrolytes of your foes. This is where blade mode develops even further incentivization. While there are pickups like health and focus meter enhancers, you will gain back not just all of your focus, but also all of your health when you crush those Arctic Freeze-filled gut balls. You will be constantly cutting and retrieving these suckers, in a move dubbed the Zandatsu, which directly translates to cut and take. A very fitting name for a move this ferocious. To branch from your primary method of damage dealing, let's talk about the difficulty of Revengeance. This game is tough. I play on hard for pretty much every game nowadays, and let me tell you, this is no walk in the park. On hard and above, you are expected to be at your best most of the time, meaning that if you don't learn parrying and enemy management quickly, you'll be hearing the ever so iconic Metal Gear series Deathcom call quite often.
Raiden, respond! Raiden! Raiden!
But that's just how Platinum likes their games. Hard enough to have you coming back, and easy enough to where you feel like you're still progressing personally. That being said, of course, there are 2 extra difficulties that are unlocked only after beating the game once and then twice: Very Hard and Revengeance difficulty. According to some videos, most notably Jacob Geller's and the wiki, Very Hard is just a harder hard. Nothing too notable, honestly. But when we get to talking about Revengeance difficulty, suddenly our conversation reaches a new level of intrigue. In short, since I haven't played it, Revengeance sees the player and the enemy pretty much on even footing. You die in about 1 or 2 hits, while the same can occur to whomever you're facing. I feel pretty satisfied with just hard. I die for sure, but it's not a frustrating experience like some other games. When you do dive into this game, be sure to heed my words on the parry and block functions, and I think you'll be just fine. Okay, back to weapons. To talk about what you use to do the dirty, we need to first talk about how you get them. You begin the game with Raiden's signature anime boy high frequency blade, or HFB for short. Essentially, think of this thing's edge in a perpetual state of motion similar to a chainsaw, but to a much finer degree. This allows Boy Wonder to cut virtually anything and not severely dull the blade in the process. How does this work, you may be asking? Just roll with it. Nano machines, probably. I don't know, it's a game. And anyway, you only ever have access to 2, technically 3 of these things. One is the default blade, while the other is the sword used by Foxhound, which supports extra range and a slew of upgrades that basically puts your game into cutscene mode, if you know what I mean. The third sword is Sam's blade, which you can use in the final bout against Armstrong, so it's hard to count it as a true weapon at your disposal, regardless that red electricity is cool as hell. Now for the secondary and tertiary weapons, also known as the best cases of completely unnecessary game mechanics I can find. With every boss you kill in the game, minus Blade Wolf, since he doesn't actually, die, you are given the ability to purchase the weapon they used in the respective boss fight. These include Mistral's arm staff, Monsoon's size, and Sundowner's scissor arms. This game is slowly starting to sound more like a Devil May Cry or God of War, but you would unfortunately be quite mistaken. Every secondary weapon has their own small set of moves, with the option to expand their capability further in the shop through upgrades. More on that later. My issue with them stem from their incorporation. While you have a secondary weapon equipped, you lose access to any and all heavy attacks with your sword, a weapon which has an incredibly extensive upgrade list and ocean of combo strings. Most of the weapons don't even continue your strings either, like Monsoon's Sai has all of one attack which pulls either Raiden or a small enemy to each other. Super damn useful, but it gets rid of all of your heavy attacks, so honestly I find that negates most of the purpose of having a pull function. Or take Sundowner's scissors. They're cool for sure, it's all about charging and releasing to deal heavy damage, but the problem is, it's in a game that is entirely about going as fast as humanly possible through those who stand in front of you. Yeah, it doesn't come off as lazy design, but rather without direction. Flawed. Speaking of which, I need to talk to you about equipment. Grenades and rocket launchers, your tertiary weapons, all activated with a press or hold of LB. You have access to a slew of different grenades, which I know for a fact was only necessitated because the other entries into the Metal Gear series had grenades aplenty. You have access to EM, jamming, red phosphorus, and fragmentation grenades. Beyond them, you can also use RPG-7s and Stinger missiles, with RPG-7s being dumbfire and Stinger missiles being lock-on. I bet you thought I was done. Nope. You can also use 3D photo frames, which function identically to the old girly mags of yore, cardboard boxes to make that ever so great callback, because it's necessary I guess, and oil drums which do the exact same thing as a box. All of these things are just completely unnecessary, like I said before. Of course, they have their own uses, but they're not fun to equip and throw/shoot at all. You have to stay still and aim, which is completely averse to Revengeance's core gameplay philosophy. That's all about going as fast as possible and doing it in the most precise manner able. Outside of usables, the player can also purchase with the game's currency, health, and focus upgrades. They are exactly how they sound, possessing the ability to upgrade how easy it is for you to die and how long you can remain in slow motion blade mode. You earn more currency to buy upgrades and weapons from Air Doctor at the end of every mission, with varying returns based on your mission performance. Just a final note that I hope will further convince you that I really do dig this game's combat. I made a conscious decision not to upgrade my sword's damage, just to make fights last longer. I don't know, you may not enjoy the style of swording as much as me, but I hardly ever find myself not maxing everything out as soon as possible, and this game is definitely an exception to that principle. I think I strayed far enough to finally mention this game's soundtrack and how amazing it is. We need to talk about it. Composed primarily by Jamie Christopherson, oh my god, I actually said that right the first time, with voices and instrumentation by a slew of metal musicians and DJs, Metal Gear Rising delivers to us a sound uniquely its own, with my favorite tracks being the best paired together, Collective Consciousness and It Has to Be This Way, both being vocal tracks against Senator Armstrong. If there was ever something to learn from a game's soundtrack, it's that orchestra is not always the way you need to do things. Because Devil May Cry and Doom have anything to chip in, hiring actual proven rock, electronic, and metal musicians to do your music can result in a sound very much its own that will have players for literally decades still listening. Well, the good stuff is out of the way. It's time for my personal favorite section, of course, my gripes about the game. Starting with what I said already, the game's needless use of secondary and tertiary weapons. It doesn't necessarily drag down the experience, however, they're so oddly implemented into a game that clearly does not need them. And I hate saying that because it's not like there wasn't some love thrown their way. They're useful, most definitely, but for the sake of the game's focus, they should have all been either chopped or re-implemented to better allow a seamless experience using them. Not taking away Raiden's ability to heavy attack with the sword or be required to essentially ready, aim, and throw, or shoot, the selected explosive. Or a stealth mechanic in a hack and slash game. Yeah, I don't really get it. It just didn't work, guys. All the time and budget could have been used for new primary weapons or just anything but that. Next is acknowledging the blatant filler that this game has. I won't talk about game length being an issue because 5 hours on hard can still be worth your money. Instead, it's about what makes up probably about a fifth of the entire runtime. These stupid ass talking segments. Look, I get it. There's two ways to look at them. These are breaks in the action to be filled with exposition, but what they actually come off as is some terrible examples of padding for playtime to reach a certain publisher quota. I will play the most egregious example just after you enter the Desperado lab in Mexico. Air Doctor talks to you for a solid 45 seconds, slowly walking down this hallway.
This would appear to be the UG maintenance area. You should find a terminal there. Something they use to upload mission parameters to the UGs.
And something I can use to access the lab's main server?
Perhaps. But first you need to take a dump.
Wait, what?
A dump? A digital optical output mounted proxy. You'll need one to interface with the terminal. Most any UG should suffice. A tripod or the like.
I'll see what I can come up with. How do I use it?
Simply connect to it. You should be able to use your communications outlet to control the proxy UG.
Alright, let's give it a shot.
These walk and talks can also be disguises for loading the next area too, which was born out of necessity for a pretty weak 7th generation consoles, the PS360 era. If that is the case, which I'm pretty sure it is, then this sin is absolutely absolved. And how I know that they're loading zones is because, well, if you just look at them, essentially every single time you talk to someone, with few exceptions, it's in a hallway, in some place that has minimal geometry to load and minimal lighting to, cast. But really, poor weapon focus and these god-awful talking segments are the only things plaguing this game. It's no 10 out of 10, obviously, but you will certainly get your money's worth with the writing, music, and combat. I think it is time for us to talk about the graphics, and after that, we done. Being a game from the early 2010s, Revengeance still falls prey to the design philosophy of then, but to an honestly lesser degree, thankfully. Colors are muted and have their own filters for each area, but thankfully, it's not all the same freaking color. It's not all green, it's not all gray, it's not all that ugly pp yellow color that Human Revolution had. You know the one. There actually is some variety present in this game's color grading, from the immense yellows and oranges of the African sun, to the dingy greens and browns of the Mexican sewers, to the blues and grays of Denver, Colorado, to the bright pastels of the Pakistani desert. Don't be fooled, this game still looks like something from the 2010s, trying to be as realistic as possible, so not that great. But character design-wise, it's coming in full force if you ask me. Everyone looks great. Raiden and Monsoon's combat heals are awesome, as they're sort of a Platinum game staple too, which is always nice. Mech design wise, it looks distinctively Metal Gear, so seriously art style works pretty well. I wouldn't change much of anything to it. On the animation side of things, quality is of the Platinum standard. Despite the obvious red or yellow glowing eyes, the wind-up animations for every enemy telegraph their intentions pretty well. Cutscenes are emotive, almost to the point of parody in some spots, which does nothing but add to the overall quality of the game. Trust me, if the game looks like how it does, it would not benefit from boring, always serious cutscenes. Facial animations aren't always synced up perfectly in cutscenes, but it's still days, years, millennia above the typical blah, 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 blah we sometimes get from this era, so I can't really complain. I think that's really it for me. Overall, Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance is one of my favorite games to gush about on both the internet and in my head. It's the chef's special of gaming, really. With gameplay you'll remember for a long time, coupled with the writing quality of Platinum and Kojima combined. Do not sleep on this one. I bought it on Steam for a lowly, like what, $7.50 or something? On sale. It's cheap. It's also available on the newest consoles too, minus the Switch of course, because Nintendo. For Xbox, you just need to purchase the 360 versions on the Microsoft Store for $20 not on sale, and probably like $5 whenever it is on sale. As for PlayStation, this is only available via PS Now because the PS5 stupidly does not play. It does not emulate PS3 games. I don't know why they didn't do that. Meaning that you have to run your game through the PS Now servers, which means if you have a poor internet connection, you are completely out of luck. Yeah, you're just better to play the game on a PS3 or backwards compatibly on a PS4. However, it is important to note that the PS3 versions never got as much love as the 360 versions, so you might run into some graphical errors or just general glitchiness. Every version runs at a locked 60 FPS, which is a very rare sight to behold, if we're being honest. I couldn't even imagine how different Revengeance felt fresh off the disc roller in 2013, where 60 FPS was this phantom number that only the PC elitists could experience. Probably a fresh breath of marrow hair, honestly. But that's it for me, gamers. This concludes my 2-part 100 sub special, To Cut a Soul, Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance. Those of you who watched the whole thing back to back, how'd you like it? Or if this was my first video you've ever watched, please kindly take a gander at my other work. Or subscribe and join my journey to reach pure gamerdom. It's a fun time. Next video might be about Cyberpunk. I'm not too sure yet. It's just on the drawing phase right now, so if you guys got suggestions, ideas, whatever, I can definitely take a look at them. Yeah, that's really about it. Sweet. See you guys later.